What's up, y'all? Roy here, and you are listening to the Clemenz with a Z podcast. Today's episode is called Hold My Apple. I'm Finding Gratitude. Now, on this podcast, I've explored poetry as a way to reflect, to heal, and to see life from different angles. Poetry has the ability to say in just a few lines what it takes us days, weeks, even years to process. When I read a good poem, it often feels like I'm speaking directly to something I felt but couldn't quite put into words. Today I want to share a poem that did that exactly for me. And it's a poem about gratitude. Not the kind of force yourself to feel. It's about the quiet, steady kind of gratitude that's been holding you up all along, even when you didn't notice. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. Why do we need so many reminders to be grateful? There are countless poems, stories, and talks about it, which makes me wonder, how do we forget so much? How do we overlook the things that have carried us through the hardest moments of our lives? Maybe it's because we don't pause long enough to see them. Life moves so fast, and when we're constantly juggling responsibilities, stress, and the noise of the world, we lose sight of what's right in front of us. And I believe social media and everything else around us tell us that perfection is what we need, and that we should always be chasing more success, more possessions, more achievements. And in the rush to keep up, I believe we miss the simple things that have always been there, quietly holding us up. This poem by James A. Pearson helped me see that. Let me read it to you. It's called What I'm Trying to Say. I'm not saying that it's been easy, this life. Harder, in fact, than you've ever expected. What I'm saying is that every one of your mornings has been met by the sun rising. Every time you made $1, it was met by an apple, whose firm white flesh, a partnership of tree and rain, of sunlight and farmer and soil, is no different than a miracle. What I'm trying to say is the world has worked wonders to make sure there's been ground beneath every one of your steps. You are never alone. Even now you can lean back into the strong arms of this moment and let yourself be held by what has always held you. Every day, there's a reason to bathe your life in gratitude. Now, when I first read this poem, it made me pause. It reminded me that even in the hardest seasons of life, there's been something quietly holding me up. But it also made me ask, why is it so easy to forget that? And so I want to talk about that for a minute, about forgetting, remembering, and finding gratitude again when life makes it hard to see. And I think he gets it. He says life is hard. And there's no sugarcoating in that. Right at the start, there's this honesty that pulled me in. I'm not saying it's been easy, this life. Harder, in fact, than you ever expected. It's not pretending that life is sunshine and rainbows. He acknowledges that life can be overwhelming, and sometimes it's more difficult than we ever thought it would be. That resonates with me so much. That acknowledgement, I think, is what's most important for me. Because for me, I've often found that I can't access gratitude when someone's trying to sugarcoat my experience or push me to quote unquote just be positive. Pearson doesn't do that. He meets you where you are. He gets it. And I know that all of us feel that way when someone gets it. There's this closeness that we feel to someone who's gone through what we've gone through or sees things the way we see it. It pushes us towards that person and we're more likely to listen. But then in the poem, it calls you back to the small miracles, which I think is most important. The sun, the apple. It says, after meeting you in that space of difficulty, he gently calls you back to the things that you may have stopped noticing. He talks about the sun rising every morning, a reminder that even when you don't feel it, the world is still turning, still moving, and still offering another chance. And then there's the apple, just a simple apple. But he reminds us that this small thing that we take for granted is the product of a miracle. Tree, rain, sunlight, soil, farmers. How many of these little miracles do we walk past every day without realizing they're there? And look, I'm not saying that we should just be constantly there, walking around looking and for the miracles, but I think a pause during the day to notice that. That's what I think I'm trying to get across, and what this poem is trying to get across as well. Then also that you're never alone. And this line hits me the hardest. You're never alone. And I think a lot of us have felt the opposite at times. There have been moments in my life when I felt I was surrounded by people but felt completely isolated. Or there were moments when no one was physically there and I believed I was truly on my own. But when I pause, when I think about what this line is really saying, it's not necessarily about people. I think it's about something deeper. The ground beneath us, the air around us, the natural world holding us up without asking for anything in return. It's funny, but it's a reminder that I didn't know I needed. Let yourself be held by what's always held you. This is another powerful line. I think, honestly, one of the most powerful lines. It says, even now you can lean back into the strong arms of this moment and let yourself be held by what's always held you. What a concept, right? How often do we fight against life, trying to carry everything ourselves, when we could lean back and just trust the things that are steady and reliable? For me, that line feels like permission. Permission to stop fighting, stop chasing perfection, and to just be supported by the things that have already carried me this far. And then in the last part, every day, there's a reason to bathe your life in gratitude. The ending wraps it up all together so beautifully. He's not saying that every day is easy, or that we won't face hard things. And that wouldn't resonate with me either if that's what he was saying. Because that's not life, right? But every day, if we pause long enough, there is something worth appreciating. Something to remind us that we're not alone, that life has small wonders waiting for us. I think that's what you're bathing your life in gratitude means. It's not a one-time thing. It's a practice, a daily washing away of the noise so we can see the small miracles again. So that's why I think we need poetry, and specifically more poems like this. We need them to remind us, to bring us back to what's always been there but so easy to forget. And maybe gratitude isn't about perfect moments or grand gestures. I think it's about slowing down enough to notice the apple in your hand, the sun on your face, or the feeling of being held by what's always been holding you. So, let me leave you with this question. What's something small and miraculous in your life right now that you haven't been seeing? What's been holding you up? One small act that's helped me stay connected to this writing or this poem and feeling of gratitude is writing down 5 to 10 things I'm grateful for each day. Doesn't take long, but it's become an important pause in my life. It helps me navigate whatever I'm dealing with in the moment, and it's a reminder of everything I've been given, everything that's carried me through the storms I've faced. In a way, this simple act is what gives me strength. It grounds me in what's real, in what's already here, instead of what's missing or what's going wrong. And so as I leave you, I want to leave you from this excerpt from The Laughing Heart by Charles Bukowski, which is another poem that I've spoken about on this podcast, because I think that it connects us to that small little act that we can do of writing down your gratitude. In the line in it, it says, be on the watch. There is a light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. And so in me writing these small 5 to 10 things, I feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking for that light, that little bit of light to hold on to. Because when we pause and we look for that light, when we take the time to see the small miracles and moments of gratitude, it becomes easier to navigate the darkness. We realize that even when the light feels faint, it's enough to guide us through. So again, I ask you, what's something small and miraculous in your life right now that you haven't been seeing? What's been holding you up? Maybe that's where the light starts. So thank you for tuning into this episode of Clemenz with a Z podcast. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep these important conversations going. If you'd enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review. It really helps more people find these stories and be a part of this journey. And remember, I'm just a channel, I ain't the source. If you like this poem I read today, it's by James A. Pearson and comes from the book The Wilderness That Bears Your Name. I'll include a link to the book in the show notes if you'd like to explore more of his work. If you'd like to support the podcast financially, you can find the link to my GoFundMe in the show notes or on the Clemenz with a Z Instagram page. If you'd like to be a guest or comments or anything like that, you can reach out at clemenswithaz@gmail.com, or you can also direct message me on the Clemenz with a Z Instagram page. So until next time, y'all, take care of yourself, stay grateful, and keep growing. Peace.